Serving is a must. He's the Alpha, the first. This is DJ Nicholas on the show. When you hear the trumpet or the flute, know it's a battle. Time to put your pickle in a drive, ready to tackle. Like Mary, you are going to use your foot kick off shackle. When the war so easy, and me body. And when the God man them there, the man to man the look and the shot them there. So I know the times when the hand them there, and I the devil plan me with man them. We ever run them and when the God man them there, the man to man the look.
Man, where the God man them there. Well, welcome, man from Morn Point to Nick Grill. This is May 13, 2026. This is the mailbox. We're dealing with men and church hurt, and this is part 2. So, welcome. Thank you so much for turning in and listening in. I appreciate your presence. So, church hurt for men often involves silent treatment, silent suffering, betrayal, or abuse within religious settings, leading many to feel devalued, disillusioned, and isolated. This quiet crisis involves dealing with toxic environments or hypocritical leadership, leaving men questioning their faith, their relationships, and place within the church. There are some aspects of men experiencing church hurt. They respond by silence and stoicism. Many men deal with pain privately, fearing that expressing hurt makes them vulnerable or exposed. Betrayal by leadership. Hurt is often deep when leadership fails or acts toxically, destroying trust in the institution. Devaluation. Men may feel made an example of, will make an example of you. They may be ignored or valued only for their resources rather than their well-being. Then the backseat syndrome. Wounded men may continue to attend, yet sit on the sidelines with crossed arms, waiting for the next hurt or struggling with deconstruction. All these things are happening. This is the program designed for men with guests who are men, hosted by men, and it's aired every Wednesday unless it's a holiday at 5:30 p.m. right here on Love 101, the family station. It's the mailbox. By the way, I'm Kevin Bailey. And to all listeners, thanks for making Love 101 your station of choice. We're talking about men and church hurt, part 2. And today, we'll be continuing our conversation with a very special guest, my friend, my colleague, Mr. Andre Davis, counseling psychologist, as he shares on how individuals can understand and overcome the specific pain of this religious trauma. My co-host is right here. Hey, Courtney.
Indeed, good afternoon, everyone. Courtney Morrison here, along with Kevin Bailey. This is the mailbox, and we are in part 2 of this entire program. And so our guest this evening is someone who, for over 2 decades, has sat with people in some of the hardest moments of their lives. He's Andre H.C. Davis, and he's an associate counseling psychologist with more than 24 years of clinical experience here in Jamaica. Yes, he has here for that long. He earned his Master's of Arts in Counseling Psychology from the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology and his Bachelor of Arts Theology from the Jamaica Theological Seminary. For over 20 years, he served as a clinical psychologist at Bellevue Hospital, walking alongside Jamaicans in serious mental health distress until the COVID-19 pandemic brought the chapter of his hospital service to a close. At the same time, for 2 decades from 1999, he served as a counseling psychologist and clinical supervisor with Family Life Ministries. Today, he serves supporting the National Suicide Prevention and Substance Use Helpline. He lectures at his alma mater, and his teaching has taken him and substance. His alma mater and his teaching has taken them across the Caribbean to southern St. Lucia, to Grenada Theological Institute and University of the West Indies. He has also the most demanding work, a clinician, of human trafficking and the training of government ministries here in Jamaica to respond. And alongside of that, to Marsha, a father to their 13-year-old son, a missionary who has preached across the Caribbean and the United States since the age of 16, an active member of Christian Life Fellowship since the 1980s, and a worship leader known for his singing. Wow. And much more to be said, but that's all we'll give you for today.
Yes, gentlemen, it's wonderful to be with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming again, Andre. Really appreciate the commitment and the sacrifice you're making. So wanna thank you so much for coming, and we're looking forward to a great time. So much inside of you. We're gonna try to use the time wisely. So man and man, remember, we want to hear from you. We're live on Facebook and YouTube at Love 101 FM Jamaica. Remember, you can leave your comments via our WhatsApp line, 876-997-3125, or call our studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328. Also, we're on TikTok at Love 101 FM Jamaica.
So ladies, wanna say, how would you help a man who is suffering from church hurt? How would you do that? You can participate in the program by leaving a message via WhatsApp, Facebook, or YouTube. Females, remember, no calls or voice notes are allowed. So that's the question. How would you help a man who is suffering from church? Kev?
Right. So we normally give a shout out. This is a part of our ritual. And we're gonna ask Andre to join us again after 3. We're gonna just say Mandaya. We have to. We know his verse in the English, but no, we're making broke out by saying Mandaya. So after 3, 1, 2, 3.
Mandaya.
Yes.
Mandaya.
Hey, Courtney. You're doing some double up there, but man is here. All right. So before we head into the main discussion, it's now time for us to get into the segment that we dub Draft, where we preliminarily open the way to our main segment. We want to ask our guest, Andre H.C. Davis, is the church doing enough to address the issue of church hurt? Andre, yes?
No, the church is not doing enough to address the issue of church hurt. Often because it is really not understood. That's number one. And secondly, we in this society are often trauma blind because of our history as a nation having to do with transgenerational trauma. So there are things that we simply ignore or we don't see because it is so much a part of our lived experience that is just the norm. So somebody might actually be hurting, and we just simply ignore it or we minimize it. And it is also a way of coping in the context of the church, where because the church plays such a pivotal role in shaping identity in the space where people meet socially and interact, where there is the whole grounding of our values and attitudes and the shaping of just general everyday lived meaning, what we call meaning making, the place where we find the basis for life. And so because of that, we would just be trauma blind. So we unconsciously will just kind of, to be able to cope, we just don't look at it. We don't see it. We don't talk about it. We don't mention it. and it's never discussed. When was the last time you went to a church service and you heard a discussion about church wounds? I never heard a sermon about church wounds or church hurt. That's just not something that we do, because it would then mean that we're going to be hanging out our dirty clothes, our dirty laundry in public, and those are one of the things that in our particular society we tend not to do. Although we chat a lot on the veranda,
Yes.
And of course, we've moved it today to social media. But we often do not talk about some of the things that bring about deep wounds for our people.
Wow. So we're
So
ignoring
much
it.
to digest. I guess as a pastor, I'm learning.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can understand now, church hurt is the relational, emotional, psychological, and spiritual injury sustained within a Christian faith community that wounds not just an individual sense of belonging, dignity, safety, but also their relationship with God. Because the church is an attachment figure. The church is a lived family system. And
Mm-hmm.
so the connection that we have, we associate the church also with God Himself. Just like how parents are the models for God. So if you grew up with a father and you had a good relationship with your father, it is understood that it would also translate to you not having a difficulty with being able to bond and connect with God the Father, right? Because you have inside of you an internal model that works, which says, hey, this is how God is. Because our parents are the lived model that we have in terms of our connection with God. Interesting.
So yeah. Would you say then, Andre, that all churches would experience some level of church hurt, and would it be intentional or unintentional, or is a combination? No, you mentioned. Yeah.
I think it's a combination. I think there are instances where it happens, but people might not realize that it's that they're actually hurting each other.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are other instances, especially what we call high control environments, where particular churches that operate in a particular theological frame sometimes, they will have a lot of hurt taking place. But it is
Mm-hmm.
often minimized, or people are kind of shunned, or it is just people just move from that church and go to another church. Because we have, I mean, Jamaica is a country with multiple churches every square mile.
Yeah.
So very often people will move from one place to the next, but they will carry the pain with them. And that's an important thing to bear in mind, eh?
Yeah. Well, Andre, we're gonna go a little deeper when we come back. This is Courtney and Kevin in the mailbox. So very special guest, Andre H.C. Davis, counseling psychologist. We are gonna take our first break. Then we're gonna come back. We'll be talking, continue the conversation about men and church hurt. We'll be back in a moment.
I am a man, I am a man, I am a man, yes. Strong man, integrity man, I am a man.
Are you ready to step into who God is calling you to be? Calling all leaders, creatives, entrepreneurs, and purpose-driven individuals ready to move from process to purpose. Make sure you're at the Becoming Conference 2026, happening in Kingston, Jamaica, at the Crystal Hotel on Saturday, June 27 from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. This hybrid transformational experience is under the theme, Becoming Aligned from Process to Purpose. Register now at spiropen.com/Becoming Conference or call 876-227-7590. The Becoming Conference, it's time to become.
This is Love 101 FM, the family station. It's 5:45.
Mega Mart, let's tell you by far. You can get it all here at Mega Mart. Mega Mart, let's tell you by far. You can get it all here at Mega Mart.
Mega Mart, the best value by far. My Mega Mart.
I am a man, I am a man, I am a man, yes. Strong man, integrity man, I am a man.
Welcome back to the program. This is the Mailbox. Pastor Courtney Morrison here along with counseling psychologist Kevin Bailey. Our special guest today is Mr. Andre H.C. Davis, and we're talking about church hurt, church trauma. We want to get a little bit more into it. This is part 2. We are hoping that we a little synopsis of church hurt is while we delve a little deeper. We were talking about churches not doing enough just before we got to the break, and we have never heard a sermon about the wounds. How important is it? Well, I'm one of those who believe the scripture says, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but one of love, power, and of a sound mind. And in the church, we tend to negate the issue of mental ability or mental illness. Andre, help us a bit more. How do we get the church to start ensuring that we pay more attention to this illness of church trauma or church hurt?
Well, I think one of the important things is that we have to talk about mental health, because church hurt automatically fuses into the issue of mental health. And in Jamaica, unfortunately, we have a profound stigma about mental health. And mental illness, we often see a dichotomy between mental illness and what happens, for example, in the spiritual world. We automatically, in our culture, tend to see mental illness as being demonic. And so that now becomes a very conflicting situation where we can't merge the fact that it can be both, right? So a person can have a mental illness, but there can also be the implications of the spiritual world as well, right? But mental illness is associated. For example, when a person experiences church hurt or church trauma, it is lived in the person's body, right? Because the nervous system of the person has been impacted.
Yes.
And one of the effects of it is that the person can become what we call hypervigilant, which means that the nervous system is in this constant state of expectation of something bad happening. Many persons that suffer from being church hurt or who have gone through the experience of church hurt will eventually begin to deal with issues of depression and anxiety. For example, a lot of pastors who have been hurt by churches, and this is the other thing, the church in Jamaica, we don't always handle our church leaders very well. As a matter of fact, you can have what we call congregation mobbing, where the persons in the community, a set of people, will actually turn on the leader, right? They will first of all idealize him. Then all of a sudden they'll begin to do what we call devalue him. So him is like the worst person that ever come round, and everybody start gang up all of a sudden. Them start set up system for find a way to accuse the man and have all kind of things to say about him wife and him picnic, and and we start to treat the person. So you would think that this person is the worst person that has ever existed. When in actual fact, is the church itself, the congregation itself, that has actually wounded and turned on the leader like a pack of wolves. And there are certain types of people that will who have particular kind of what we call personality issues or personality problems that will end up turning on the pastor. and they can shatter the person's life. And
And
many men do not recover, many pastors do not recover. They end up becoming quite ill. I have had to minister and take care of some of these people.
Andre, it sounds almost very abnormal. It sounds like we don't expect these things to happen in the house of the Lord, because this is a safe space where we love each other unconditionally and the Holy Spirit is in full control. Yet you're telling us that the congregation can mob the leader,
Yes, sir.
almost destroying him.
And
No,
destroy his reputation, destroy his family, set upon him, try to find a way to actually deal with him. Just like how, you do have, for example, church leaders that have particular personality dynamics or issues, right? So you can have the person who has very narcissistic kind of, who exploits others because they want admiration, they want adoration, and the church is a perfect place for people to kind of develop this kind of space where they can end up being, I guess, manipulated and being used to fulfill the needs of these people, right? But the same thing can happen with what we call the clergy killers, right? So they will utilize destruction, deception. You'll have the women who have their own particular unfinished business, and they will turn on the pastor. They come dressed in a particular way. They will try to manipulate him, deceive him, right? Some persons, of course, I'm sure you would know, Kevin, that in Jamaica we had research done by the former Professor Hicklin, who spoke
yes.
about the fact that in Jamaica we have some of the highest amount of personality disorders in
Yeah.
the world. It's something like it's within the 30 to 40% of the population have some kind of malformation in their personality. And that is not to say everybody know, please don't get this wrong, but this is just a part of what showed up out of the research, that we have some very serious issues going on. And all of that is also rooted in how we raise our families, in the dynamics of our families and the unfinished business of our family. Because trust me, you see, when we ready for treat our family member them bad, right? Look here, I worked at Bellevue for 20 something years. When I hear some of the stories of how people have treated their children, and
Mm.
then they come around and expect them to just, it's as if, oh, well, everything is fine, you're okay. And you're
Mm.
supposed to treat me a certain way, when in actual fact, we've exploited, we've not provided care, we've not, all of these men that have children outside of marriage, and they never take care of their children. And please don't get me wrong, we do have fathers in our country who are excellent fathers,
Yeah.
right? And they're very good. But we have some people that really damage them, picnic them, right? And them damage the psyche of the children. Do you know that a lot of the men who end up in prison, who are the ones that are damaged? They were damaged by their fathers and they were damaged by their mothers.
So,
It was because of their mothers that they were actually, their psyche was damaged. And they end up developing these personality issues. So we see a lot of these things working themselves through. So to answer come back to the question, well, how do we address this? Well, we need to talk about the real issues about family life. We need to talk about how it is we can develop healthy relationships. And we need to have examples in our community of what a healthy church is, what a healthy person is. And for us to learn, just like how if you go in the bank, the persons that are the tellers, they learn to identify real money. This is what
yes.
authentic money look like.
Yeah.
So if fake money come, you'll be able to detect that this is a fake thing. Which is why the scriptures say you must be in the Bible, study the scriptures for yourself, understand and learn to think for yourself. Remember last time I was here, I said that
Yeah.
many times when we come to church, we put our brain at the door.
Mm.
You understand me? And so we have to learn to think. No, brethren. It's important to understand. Look here, if a man gets into an accident, he has a brain injury coming out of the accident, and then suddenly you begin to see changes in the personality and the behavior of the person. The person actually begins to see a shift. There's a physical injury that has happened to the brain. And out of that now, it begins to change the behavior and the mental status, how the person might develop a mental illness. The same thing can happen from trauma. And if you were raised in a family where there was constant trauma, it literally changes how your brain works. And that can also affect your mental health. And we don't talk about those things in church. You understand me? So even things like, for example, if you come into the church and the music is so loud, we have children and people that cannot be in an environment like that.
Right.
Because it becomes overwhelming, it actually begins to affect their mental health. Right? But it is the norm in our culture for us to be very loud and so on, and to be very expressive. But there are a set of people who are impacted by those things. So those are different things that we need to have conversations about. Right?
Andre,
Yes.
it's quite a lot, you know, that we're getting into. And before we take our second break, for those who have just joined us, didn't hear part 1, 2, can you give us a definition of church hurt, the trauma, and how is this experienced?
Okay, so church hurt is 1 second for me. Church hurt is a relational, emotional, psychological, and spiritual injury sustained within a Christian church faith community that wounds an individual's sense of belonging, dignity, safety, or relationship with God. And this occurs within a covenantal community, not a neutral institution. The relational bonds carry profound theological weight, given the betrayal that is experienced, in particular, a certain kind of sting. It is a disruption of professed faith and the truth. And what we also see is that because the church is a sanctuary, right? When a person experiences a trauma of this magnitude in the refuge of the church, then the church itself becomes a source of harm, creating a profound violation of safety. Clinically, if we were to talk about this now becomes associated with what we call religious trauma syndrome. Okay? And
Religious
religious
trauma syndrome. Andre, let us take a pause there. We're going to take it up when we come back from this break. This is the Mailbox, Courtney and Kevin in the place, and our very special guest, Andre Davis, counseling psychologist. We'll be back in a moment.
I am a man, yes. Strong man, integrity man. I am a man.
Get your tickets now. Don't miss Come Alive, a national call to worship this Emancipation Day, August 1, 2026.
Limited special offer tickets available now
At Love 101 FM, Monday to Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Prices are as follows. General admission $7,000, VIP $22,000, and VVIP $32,000. Secure your tickets early and be part of a powerful night of worship, music, and impact.
Limited special offer tickets available now
At Love 101 FM, Monday to Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
This is Love 101 FM, the family station. It's 6 o'clock.
I am a man, I am a man, I am a man, yes. Strong man, integrity man. I am a man.
Welcome back to the program, The Mailbox. Courtney Morrison, along with Kevin Daly and our special guest, Mr. Andre H.C. Davis, counseling psychologist. We're talking about men and church hurt. We heard about what is known as religious trauma syndrome. You come to a place known as a sanctuary, a safe space, and to experience trauma that can affect mental health seriously. You know, after the program last time we had it, I got a call from a young man, a friend of mine, who is a leader in a church. And, we were spoken about congregation, pastor, congregation, but his situation is one leader to leader. And he is so traumatized by the hurt that he has experienced. He just called me and said, "You talked about me last week, last program, and we spent almost an hour just trying to walk him through what was happening. And sometimes it seems we may have to find another sanctuary,
That's right.
another safe space." Andre, when someone experiences these significant degrees of hurt, whether a congregation, I heard you mention a bit that they might need to find somewhere else to go. Is that the wise thing to do? Should there be confrontation? Should there be mediation when this sort of thing is occurring? How do we fully?
You see, it really depends on the particular system within which the person has experienced this, because in systems where, for example, there is enmeshment, and by enmeshment we mean that the pastor is so bound up with everybody, right? Because very often in the church culture, if you're not working 80 hours a week and taking care of everybody, you're responsible for everybody, then what happens is that people's identity becomes swallowed up by the church role. And then the boundaries between the person and the other members of the church gets diffused. And what happens is that if the person you can end up having what we call friendly fire, where they don't even want them don't even want the pastor to take a break from like to go on vacation, right? And them calling him at 1 o'clock in the morning. He's not allowed to have any kind of time for self or for family, and the expectation that the person is supposed to be always working and always available. That can now end up creating a situation where the pastor ends up becoming exhausted and becomes vulnerable to other things, right? So there can be this, and remember, in our society, our men operate in what is called the mailbox, right? So the cultural rule in Jamaica is that men are supposed to, they're supposed to be stoic. They're not supposed to express their emotions, right? So the man experiences a wound, like if he experienced a wound from this other church leader, right? The person might experience a sense of being betrayed, judged, right? And what this does, it affects the trust level that he would have with other people. Then the person is also will often begin to isolate, and then they internalize this suffering that is taking place. And remember, in our society, there are a set of rules by which men operate differently from women, right? So men will act out. They will either internalize or they will explode, right? And they will have difficulty with being able to even find the words to express what they're really going through. Because when a person experiences trauma, what can happen is that there are particular areas in the brain that actually are impacted. For example, what we call the amygdala, which is an area where the emotions are kind of processed. What we know for sure, for example, if a person is dealing with depression, we know that the amygdala actually shrinks in size. So the person might not be able to even fully express what's really going on inside of them. because there is this damage that has already taken place in the brain chemically. So so the person might actually need to go and get medical care, maybe even psychiatric care, right? And oh, but of course, in Jamaica, that is shame now. Lord God, you're gone mad, right? Because you have to go see the psychiatrist.
Yes.
But sometimes the damage is so much to the person that the person actually does need to go and get medical care, right? Because there has been a shattering of the experience of trust. And literally on the inside, the person's worldview has been shifted, because that is part of the damage that comes out of this kind of religious trauma, right? So remember, we have a double bind situation. We have this thing, for example, what I like to call a theology of performance. So, for example, and then I'm not trying to point out Pentecostals now, all right, or charismatics, but spiritual authority for men is often derived from public testimonies of miraculous transformation and triumph over sin. So the ideal man is strong, successful, and probably victorious, right? Now, what about the burden of the man that is struggling with doubt, with addiction,
Yeah.
with unhealed trauma? He cannot produce this triumphant testimony because he cannot perform the approved version of masculinity. He feels spiritually deficient and is overlooked by the other male-dominated spiritual hierarchy. And this now conforms the pattern in the person. So if the person is going to heal, right, the person needs to move from the false narrative of believing that suffering is divine punishment or a test of loyalty to an abusive leader. He needs to move into a redemptive reality where he sees that the suffering is an opportunity for him to co-work with God, to work through the issues of his own pain, and to move from the theology of performance and stoicism to one of actual grace and vulnerability. It sounds weird. Broken
Andre.
is the vessel for divine grace.
Andre, we're gonna let you continue, but I want you to incorporate, because we have 2 voice notes we're gonna take and a question which I think in going forward you have to help us with. So let's hear the 2 voice notes and take your perspective on them, Andre.
Sure.
Good afternoon, Pastor Courtney and Counselor Minister Andrew. Yes, brother, let me tell you something. A lot of men today in the church who get a lot of church hurt by minister. They're afraid to talk. The women know that pray must come up front more than the men. But let me tell you something. If I do to follow hurt that I receive from minister, especially one which I grew up in from me 12-year-old, tell me reach, born, Sunday school, tell me accept by the age of 17 in that church. And hurt that I meet from that minister. I tell you, if I wasn't serving God, I wouldn't in until now. But because I know the true and living God, I serve. That can't stop me. But a lot of men, them afraid to speak up. Is it true that I defend why I get hurt? But I didn't abuse. But let me say, time is going, but let me say, you don't have much shepherd in the church today, in the congregation. You have more hireling. You have more hireling, more shepherd. And that's why so many hurt by ministers in the congregation. Because when you think about the church is a body of sanctified people. So the outside church got a picking us up. The congregation, the membership no means that the church. Few not saw this might not defile. Take care. God bless. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And a reminder that we only the men are allowed to do the voice notes, and ladies, you can communicate with the other platform as well. Passion and purity says agreed, but it is how the affected person processes it. It can be a stepping stone or a stumbling block. Forgiveness can heal hurts. And the question here, Andre, as you comment, what to do when independent thought clashes with dogma? That's the question there. What to do as a man when independent thought, you want to share your truth, you want to share what you're experiencing and your perspective on things, but there is the dogma, the
Right.
system set up. Yeah. What
Right.
do what
Because
happens? Yeah.
in the experience of persons that are in what we call high control religious systems, if you have a belief that is different from the dogma, from the stated list of things, then the outcome is going to be that you are going to be ostracized and you are going to be said to be under the devil's influence, or you are going to be the scripture is going to be used to to flag you, to beat you, and that now creates a scenario where the person, as was stated, the person is not going to speak. And so in situations like that, I think it's important that people understand that they have to take time away from a situation like that. They have to do what we call spiritual deprogramming, stepping back from the high control environment to break the
Mm.
cycle of enmeshment and the kind of hypervigilance that comes with being in a situation like that. I think that they also have, as the person has said, forgiveness is an important part of the long term internal process in terms of regaining back personal agency, the ability to think and feel for yourself, completely separate from returning to the abusive environment. And it might mean that you do have to consider moving to another location, going to a different church, right? And yes, there are instances where there's a need for healthy confrontation, right? But do realize that if you confront in particular environments, the people are going to turn on you, right? Because there's kind of almost like an echo chamber where the belief system is locked. It's almost like what we call there's a group think process that takes place in a setting like that. And there isn't really opportunity for lament.
Mm.
We don't teach the theology of lament. We don't teach people how to voice pain, betrayal, and anger directly to God without fear of punishment, because the only thing that we present to people is praise and worship, and there's never any. If you go through and you read through the Psalms, you find a lot of lament. Those men knew how to understand how to take things to God, right? So you have to move to what we call a trauma informed brotherhood, where you find a set of brothers who are safe, right?
Mm.
Who are going to help you to process the things. It might mean you need to go and find a therapist. You might need to
Mm.
find somebody who will help you to process the pain and the issues, right? You need to be in a place where there is empathy and where you are allowed to confidentially share, right, what is really taking place inside of yourself. And just recognize that some
You're
people are
Andre.
just not mature enough to be able to hear you, even some of the pastors.
We're going to be taking a break here now. We're sorry about that. It's now 6:15. I love the word empathy, even juxtaposed to forgiveness. What if the person doesn't know how to process or have any idea how to process? We're up on our final break. This is the Mailbox. I'm Pastor Courtney Morrison, along with two great counseling psychologists, Kevin Bailey, and our guest, Mr. Andre C. Davis, talking about church hurt and men. We'll soon come back.
Get your tickets now. Don't miss Come Alive, a national call to worship this Emancipation Day, August 1, 2026.
Limited special offer tickets available now
At Love 101 FM, Monday to Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Prices are as follows. General admission $7,000, VIP $22,000, and VVIP $32,000. Secure your tickets early and be part of a powerful night of worship, music, and impact.
Limited special offer tickets available now
At Love 101 FM, Monday to Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Hey yo, listen up. Don't wait for the symptoms start show. HIV test free. Make sure you know. Me take my test. Me get the news. Me take my meds. You can't lose. Probably there, support there too. We strong, we poor life, I live right through. Live more test early. HIV. Know your status smooth surely. Me take my test. Me get the news. Me take my meds. You can't lose. Live more test free testing is available at health centers island. A message by the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
I am a man, I am a man, I am a man, yes. Strong man, integrity man, I am a man.
Welcome back. This is the Mailbox here every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. on your favorite station, Love 101 FM. Courtney and Kevin in the place, and we're very honored, privileged to have counseling psychologist Andre H.C. Davis. Andre, do you think
Yes.
do men process church hurt differently than women also?
Well, men do process church hurt differently, because again of how we are raised. This distinction is that we operate from the mailbox,
Yes, definitely.
right? And so the
Love the plain
mailbox
words.
has a particular frame of reference in how we operate. So the mailbox says that you are supposed to suppress your emotions. You're supposed to show that you're always strong, right? You're not supposed to express internalized pain. So if the man did treat you a certain way, you can't make nobody know, because well, the rule is that silence is what is the dominant, right? And the cultural rules forces men into a kind of restrictive masculinity. I have had men who them say, "Oh, them too emotional," when in actual fact they are the persons who are self-aware and very much in touch with their emotions and
Yeah.
aware that they're actually hurting. So you have men who will not be aware that something is actually wrong with them emotionally. They have a condition that is called alexithymia, which is where they're unable to connect to what is really taking place inside of the heart. So you ask them a question, how are you feeling? And they start to tell you what they're thinking
Okay.
and tell you what they're feeling.
Yeah.
They actually have a condition, the connection between what happened in the heart and what happened with the head. There's this clear disconnect. And they don't have the language as well to be able to connect with emotions, because again, the rules are that we are not necessarily trained in our culture to be connected to our emotions, to be aware of our internal self. It takes a certain kind of maturity. It takes a certain kind of, being able to reflect, right? Being able to think, being able to, things like reading and reflection and learning how to meditate in the word and being quiet. The ability to actually be quiet.
Mm.
Many of us in this culture, we've lost that, right? What is a sign of a person who is highly intelligent? Their ability to be quiet and to be by themselves, not isolated,
Right.
but able to reflect and to think and to come to terms with issues. to be quiet, to not always have noise around them, or to always be on the phone with a doom scrolling, because you're trying to get a constant dopamine high when you can just simply just not do anything, just be quiet. And so some of our men are hurting and they don't even know that they're actually hurting. But what they do, they start to act it out, right? They struggle with a lot of different things. They struggle with pornography, right? We have a high incidence in Jamaica. The research that was done about Jamaican men back in 2017 by Back to the Bible indicates that 40% of our men struggle with pornography. And what is pornography associated with? It is associated what we call emotional anorexia. Emotional anorexia is where you're not connected to your feelings. You're just not able to kind of function because what? You're just constantly in this state of masturbating, or the person is kind of in this low mood, that can't connect to themselves, and it also begins to affect how they connect with their partner, with their children. They're always upset, they get angry, they get easily frustrated, right? And let me just remember, I need to say this. Men begin to go into andropause from in their 30s. That is when the shift begins to take place biologically, when your testosterone levels begin to get lower. And
Now,
that
Andre, you need to say that again, because I think that's a huge. Could you just repeat that, Andre? The
sure.
age.
So
Anthropause.
just like how women have menopause, men have andropause, which begins in the 30s, which is when you reach your peak in the 20s, where your testosterone levels are at their peak, right? And so when you begin to enter into the andropause, then there begins to be a shift hormonally. And you also, which is why you have some men who just get miserable, and you wonder why them so miserable and cantankerous. Because there is actually a lowering in the testosterone levels, and other kind of biological things taking place. So when you mix all of this thing together, you have a man who they're hurt him at the church, he might experience changes in his body, right? Him not eat properly, him not sleeping properly. Our context, we have issues with how many of our men have diabetes, hypertension, right? Complication. They make wrong choices in their relationships, right? Many of them are trying to heal the wounds from their childhood. And then or they end up being in multiple relationships, and then this one fail, the next one fail. And so there's this cascade of issues that contribute to the pain. And that is separate apart from the church earth.
Another question and comment for you. Church, school, family, work, place, all of these places hurt. Why is church hurt named and not the others? Passion and purity.
Because of the fact that the church is a specific loci within the society. The church in Jamaica is not just a place for meeting. It is symbols of a place where we get rest. It's a place where we kind of almost refresh and retool. It's a place where we form and understand the purpose of life, where we discover meaning, where we shape our identity. And if there is damage that takes place within the context of the church, then it literally shocks the person at the deepest level of the self. And it's quite interesting that if you were to pull back the layers to see what is taking place in the person, you will see that it goes all the way into the self, into the core of the self. And that layering at the deepest level begins to change how the person thinks, feels, and processes things. And that is how deep the church goes. Right? We live in what we call a collectivist society, where shame and doubt and shame and guilt and shame operate in particular ways in shaping how we deal with issues and resolve issues. If a person is shamed in the context of the church, it literally goes to the person's sense of self, and they will begin to believe that I am bad, something is wrong with me. And it's never the question of what can be done to change the circumstances. And that is the reason why we need to have empathy. Empathy is the seeking to understand and not to be judgmental. And a lot of us have never been raised where somebody is listening to us to understand, but they might be listening to us to
Correct,
judge us
sir.
according to scripture.
And it flows in the question
there's
then,
so much.
Andre. Sorry. It follows, is
Go
God
ahead,
in the
Kevin. Go ahead.
middle? Yeah, is God in the middle of those suffering from church hurt? How can healing really take place? Where's God? Men would say in all of this. Can something good come out of that? What's your perspective of that, Andre?
I think that God is very much in the midst of the experience. He did not want these people to hurt you. We have to make a distinction between God and a church system, because God's desire is always for the best for us, right? And remember, we had spoken about the fact that in abusive church environments, victims are often taught that their emotional distress is a result of a lack of faith or divine punishment. When or the persons might use what we call spiritual gaslighting, right? Where they question the legitimacy of the abuse, and the persons are feeling they're sinning against God or accept the abuse and internalize the shame, right? This is often a false position because it makes God to be the author of the pain rather than the ultimate safe haven from it, right? And so what happens is that there's a need to get a right perspective about who God is. And people often do not have a clear biblical perspective as to who the living God is. His heart, his ways, understanding him as a father, understanding how he deals with us, even how he disciplines us, right? But God can take the pain of church hurt and he can turn it around and make it for our good. He can even use that pain and those issues to help us to grow and to move into a new space, to move into a redemptive reality where we understand that our worth is found in authentic, honest relationship. That God should be viewed as a co-sufferer who meets us in our pain, and that brokenness is recognized as a vessel for divine grace. Having gone through pain and brokenness becomes opportunity for greater manifestation of who God is, the person of God, and the power and the authority that comes. And of course, it means that we need to take a holistic view in terms of addressing all of the different issues to be able to move towards a level of healing.
And we have to stop there, Andre.
We have run out of time. We have run out of time. We need to know how to get in touch with you and how to ensure you matter. Chat line 876-838-4897 for youth and 888 New Life. That's 888-639-5433. I felt as if I was psychoanalyzed by my two friends today, but it was worth it. Indeed, we say thanks to Jermaine Johnson, our producer, to Angus, our technical support, and we thank especially our honored guest, Mr. Andre Davis. We end the show with this quote: "The church is not a museum for saints, but a hospital for sinners." Bernard Clairvaux said that. And indeed,
that's it for show this week. Catch you next week, Wednesday, May 20, 2026. Same place, same time inside the mailbox. Thanks again, Andre. And we normally say Monday. Monday, blessings.
Strong man, integrity man, I am a man. Hey man, I am a man, I am a man.
Here to the Family Radio broadcasting from Kingston, Jamaica. We're Love 101 FM, and the time is now 6:30 p.m.